If you have a closet full of half-finished projects, a browser with way too many tabs open on different careers, and a feeling that all of them are a part of you, well, you've come to the right place. We are going to completely dismantle that anxiety you feel. We're going to reframe all those interests not as a weakness, but as your single greatest superpower. Does this sound familiar? You're standing at a crossroads, staring down a dozen different paths, and your brain is just stuck. It's running these incredibly detailed, high-resolution simulations for every single option. You've made the spreadsheets, you've done the research, but you're still frozen. You think you need more information, but honestly, you're already drowning in it. So let's get right to the heart of it. Your problem isn't an information gap. You've got the data. The real issue here is what we'll call a resolution conflict. Your brain sees every potential future in such vivid, 8K detail that it just can't resolve which one to pick. So today, we're shifting from trying to find the one perfect choice to something much more powerful: architectural execution. We're going to start making smart choices and building from there. And you know, this feeling actually has a name. It's called the scanner's dilemma. It's that constant, nagging thought in the back of your head: I could do anything if I could only figure out what that one thing is. Society loves to slap labels on this, like dilettante or unfocused. But that's just a total misunderstanding of how your brain is wired. You're not flaky. You are intensely, incredibly curious. So why does this dilemma feel so intense right now? I mean, really, why is it so hard? It's because the world itself has fundamentally changed, but the career advice we get, it's stuck in the past. We're trying to navigate this totally new, complex world with an old, outdated map. And honestly, it's setting people like us up to fail. Psychologists have this really useful way of looking at it. They talk about kind versus wicked learning environments. The old world, the one our parents grew up in, was pretty kind of like a game of golf. The rules were clear, you got immediate feedback on your shot, and just repeating that same swing over and over again led to mastery. But the world we live in now, it's wicked. Think more like a firefighter. Every fire is different, the rules are constantly changing, and what worked on the last call might be totally wrong for this one. This world doesn't reward repetition, it rewards adaptability. And in that old kind of world, the hero of the story was the I-shaped person. You know the type, the deep specialist with that single impressive pillar of expertise. And look, we still absolutely need specialists. But the problem is when we treat that as the only valid path to a successful career. So if you're not an I, then what are you? Well, you have a totally different geometry. Your superpower is becoming an M-shaped professional, a polymath. It's where all those different interests of yours don't just sit side by side. They combine to form a uniquely powerful and stable structure. But first, let's talk about the big fear, the trap that so many of us fall into. It's the anxiety of becoming a dash-shaped person. You know, a mile wide and an inch deep. You know a little bit about everything, but you don't feel like you have any solid ground to stand on. And that feeling creates so much anxiety. We are going to build a strategy to avoid that at all costs. Okay, I love the slide because it lays it all out so clearly. On one hand, you've got the I shape, the specialist with deep expertise. On the other, the dash shape, the generalist with broad knowledge. But look at the M shape, the polymath. Its core strength isn't one or the other. It's innovation and synthesis. This is where you become the person who not only understands data science, but also knows how to tell a story. You can actually explain what the numbers mean in a way that the CEO gets. That combination, it's incredibly rare and incredibly valuable. So how does the M shape do this? What's the secret sauce? It's a concept called far transfer. See, a specialist gets really good at near transfer, solving similar problems over and over. But a polymath develops the ability for far transfer. That's when you see the underlying pattern, the hidden structure in one field, and apply it to a completely different one. It's like learning to see the music, not just the individual notes. And this is where the magic really happens. All those things you thought were just random hobbies, they become this incredible library of metaphors and models in your head. You start to see how a tree's root system gives you a brand new idea for organizing a database. Or you use concepts from musical harmony to write cleaner, more elegant software code. Your distractions literally become your secret weapons for innovation. Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? A polymath superhero. But how do we actually build this M-shaped life without just getting overwhelmed and stuck in that frozen state of analysis all over again? We need a plan. We need a blueprint, a practical strategy to move from freeze to flow. And here it is. the blueprint for what we're calling architectural execution. Notice we're not trying to find the perfect path. We are architecting a structure for your growth. It's just 3 steps. First, build your pillars one at a time. Second, use your day job as a stable platform. And third, build an external system to hold all your amazing ideas. Let's break down step 1, serial mastery. You cannot build all your pillars at once. That's a recipe for burnout. So you pick one, just one, and you commit to it for a season. Think somewhere between 6 and 18 months. This is the secret to breaking the paralysis, right here. You have to lower the stakes. You are not choosing for life, you're just choosing for now. Pick one pillar and go deep enough to get the core 80%. All right, step 2 is about reframing your day job. For so many of us, it feels like a cage. But what if you saw it as a strategic asset? Think about Einstein working at the patent office. A stable, low-drain job can be the perfect platform. It pays the bills, sure, but more importantly, it leaves you with a surplus of your most valuable resource, your mental energy. You can then take that energy and invest it in building your other pillars on the side. And the final piece of the puzzle is an external idea system. Your brain is an incredible idea factory, but your working memory? It's a tiny little workbench. You have to get ideas off the bench to make room for new ones to be built. Just look at the sociologist Nicholas Luhmann. The guy published over 70 books. His secret wasn't the superbrain. It was a simple system of index cards, a Zettelkasten, where he captured and linked his ideas. You have to capture the dots now so you can connect them later. So let's put this all together. You are not a dabbler who can't commit. You are a potential polymath. Your brain isn't broken. It's just built for a different, more complex world. It is designed to be a bridge, connecting completely different worlds of knowledge to create things that no one has ever seen before. And just owning that, really believing it, is the most important first step. So I want you to forget about forever. Seriously, forget about making the one perfect choice that will define the rest of your life. Just think about the next season, the next year or so. Out of all your interests, which one has the most energy, the most pull for you right now? You're not choosing for life. You're just choosing for this season. What's your first pillar?
All right, let's talk about something I think a lot of you are going to get. Ever feel like your problem isn't a lack of focus, but, well, having way too many things you desperately want to focus on? It's not that you're afraid of the work, right? It's that you're just paralyzed by all the choices. So, in this explainer, we're going to dive into this super common and honestly really confusing career dilemma. And I promise, by the time we're done, you are going to have a totally new way to look at this.
Man, this quote, it just hits hard, doesn't it? It's that exact feeling of standing in a hallway with like a dozen different doors and every single one feels like it could be a part of you. The problem isn't your ability, not at all. It's the crushing weight of all that potential.
If that feeling rings a bell, you are definitely not alone. This is what's known as the scanner's dilemma. And you know, society loves to put labels on people like us, right? Dilettante, or the classic, jack of all trades, master of none. And the anxiety that comes with those labels, it's real. It can make you feel like your greatest strength, your incredible curiosity, is actually your biggest weakness.
So today, we are going to completely dismantle that anxiety, piece by piece. First, we'll get right into what the scanner's dilemma is. Then, we'll look at why the old career map is just totally broken. After that, I'm going to introduce you to a really powerful new model, the M-shaped professional. We'll even uncover its secret weapon. And then, at the end, I'll give you a practical playbook to put all of this into action. Let's get into it.
Okay, so first up, the scanner's dilemma. Let's talk about where all that anxiety actually comes from. It's really this old-fashioned idea that to be successful, you have to pick one thing, just one, and stick with it forever. But what if that's just not how your brain is wired?
And that leads us right here. This is the big reframe. The problem isn't you. It's that the world has changed, but the career advice, it hasn't. For the last 100 years or so, the path to success was pretty clear. Become a specialist. Go a mile deep in one super narrow field. But the world just isn't that predictable anymore. I absolutely love this distinction between kind and wicked environments. So a kind environment, think of a golfer. It has clear rules. It rewards doing the same thing over and over. You get immediate feedback. But a wicked environment, think of a firefighter. It's totally unpredictable, and the rules are always changing. The world we live in today is way more wicked than it is kind, and that's exactly where being a hyper-specialist can actually hold you back.
And that brings us to the traditional model, the I-shaped person.
This is the expert, right? That single, deep pillar of knowledge. And hey, don't get me wrong, we absolutely need specialists. Their knowledge is invaluable. But the problem is when we treat this as the only path to success.
So if the I shape isn't the only answer, what is? Well, it's time to stop thinking in terms of job titles and start thinking in terms of shapes. Let's explore a whole new geometry for your career. But first, let's talk about a really common trap for scanners: becoming the dash shape. This is that feeling of being a mile wide and an inch deep. You know a little bit about a lot of things, but you don't feel like you have a solid foundation in any of them. And honestly, that can be a really anxious place to live.
But what if there's another way? This is where the M-shaped professional, the polymath, comes in. Now, this isn't about knowing a little about everything. It's about going deep in a few select areas and then connecting those deep pillars with all your other broad interests. This is where the magic happens.
Let me give you a real-world example of how this works. Imagine you go deep on data science, but you also go deep on storytelling. And then you connect those two pillars with your general interest in psychology and design. All of a sudden, you're not just another data scientist. No way. You're the person who can take a complex, messy spreadsheet and turn it into a story that a CEO can actually understand and act on. That is a superpower.
So how do these M-shaped people make these incredible, unique connections? Well, they have a special cognitive tool that specialists rarely get a chance to use. It's the secret ingredient that makes this entire model work.
And that secret ingredient is called far transfer. You see, a specialist mostly uses near transfer, like using what you know about one programming language to learn a similar one. But a polymath uses far transfer. It's like seeing the underlying pattern in a symphony and then applying it to a business strategy. It's about seeing the architecture of an idea, not just the paint on the walls.
And this is what far transfer looks like in the wild. A biologist sees how a tree's root system can inspire a better way to organize a company database. A musician sees how the principles of harmony can lead to more elegant, beautiful software code. You see, all those random interests you have, they're not distractions. They are a treasure trove of metaphors that can help you solve problems in completely new ways.
Okay, so I bet you're excited about this M-shaped idea. But you're probably also wondering, how do I actually build it without getting completely overwhelmed? That's what this next part is all about. We've got a playbook with 3 concrete strategies to help you start building your M-shaped life starting now. The playbook is surprisingly simple, but it is incredibly powerful. It just has 3 parts: serial mastery, the stable platform job, and the external brain. Let's break down what each of those means. First up, serial mastery. Here's the key. You cannot build all your pillars at once. That is a recipe for burnout. Instead, you pick one and you commit to it for a season, maybe 6 months, maybe 18 months. The goal isn't to become the #1 expert in the world, but to get to about 80% fluency. Then you make a conscious choice to move on. This isn't just quitting, it's strategic quitting, it's graduating. Next, strategy 2, the stable platform job. This one is a total game changer. Think about Einstein when he was working as a patent clerk. He didn't let his day job drain all of his mental energy. A super high-passion, high-stress job might sound exciting, but if it leaves you with absolutely nothing left at the end of the day, you'll never have the energy to build those other pillars. And finally, strategy 3, build an external brain. Your mind is an idea factory, not a warehouse. You have to get the ideas out. So you need a system to capture all those thoughts before they disappear. It could be Notion, a notebook, a simple voice memo. It doesn't matter what it is, as long as you have a place to store your thoughts, because that will free up your mind to make those surprising connections later on.
So let's bring this all home. You are not a dabbler. You are not flaky. You are a scanner, a polymath in the making. Your brain isn't broken. It is brilliant. You were never, ever meant to master just one thing. You are meant to be the person who can see how everything connects.
I really hope this new map for your mind brings you a sense of calm and a quiet confidence. The self-blame can start to fade away, and the excitement can finally begin to build. The only question left is the most exciting one of all. What dots will you connect first? All right, let's just get right into it. For a lot of us, the problem isn't that we don't have a passion. It's that we have way too many, right? You've got this whole graveyard of hobbies, a dozen different paths you could take, and every single one feels like it's a part of you. So today, we're going to dismantle that anxiety and build a totally new career map for people who are never, ever meant to be just one thing. So, does this feel a little too familiar?
It's not that you're afraid of hard work. You're not afraid of commitment. Nope. You are completely paralyzed by the choice. You see all these potential futures laid out in front of you, and instead of feeling empowered, you just feel stuck. This right here is the classic scanner's dilemma. And if you're not in your head right now, trust me, you are in exactly the right place.
This quote just nails the feeling, doesn't it? It's this sense that your potential is absolutely massive, but it's locked behind this one single decision you just can't seem to make. And society often slaps a label on you for this. They call you a dilettante, or a jack of all trades but a master of none. It makes your greatest strength, your just boundless curiosity, feel like your biggest career weakness. But what if that whole way of thinking is completely broken?
To really get the solution, we first have to understand why all the old advice feels like such a trap. For pretty much the last century, the world praised one very specific type of person. And if you weren't that type, well, you were told you were doing it all wrong.
You see, the world of work used to be what you'd call a kind environment. Think of it like a chessboard. The rules were super clear, the path was linear, and going really deep into one specialty was the way to win. But today, we live in a wicked environment. The rules are constantly changing, feedback is often confusing, and patterns are really hard to spot. In a world like this, that hyper-specialized approach can actually be a huge liability.
And that old kind world created the ideal of the I-shaped person, the specialist. Someone with a single, deep pillar of knowledge. And look, we absolutely need specialists. Their expertise is invaluable. The problem isn't that this path is wrong. The problem is when it's treated as the only path, which leaves everybody else feeling like a total failure for not fitting into that one specific mold.
And this brings us to the good stuff, the polymath's power. It's time to stop thinking in terms of job titles and start thinking in terms of shapes, because your brain isn't broken, it's not built for that old world, it's purpose-built for the world we live in right now.
First, though, let's talk about the common pitfall. In our rush to get away from that I shape, a lot of us end up becoming dash-shaped. We know a little bit about everything, but have no real foundation in anything. This lack of depth creates so much anxiety because it feels like you don't have any solid ground to stand on. It is the classic master of none trap.
But there's a much better way, becoming the M-shaped professional, the polymath. This is the model that turns your curiosity into a legitimate superpower. So imagine one pillar is data science, you go deep there. But your second pillar is storytelling, and you go deep there too. And that horizontal bar connecting them, that's your broad interest in psychology and history and design, and all of a sudden, you're not a distracted data scientist, you are that rare person who can take complex data and weave it into a story that a CEO can actually understand. That combination, it isn't just valuable, it's a superpower. And the magic behind this is a concept called far transfer. So specialists, they use something called near transfer, which is just applying a skill to a very similar problem. But a polymath's gift is far transfer. It's the ability to hear the underlying music, not just the notes. A musician who gets harmony might see a more elegant way to structure software code. Someone who studied how tree roots grow might see a better way to organize a company's database. Your seemingly random interests become this incredible library of metaphors for breakthrough innovation.
Okay, so how do you actually build this M-shaped life? This isn't about just aimlessly following your curiosity. It requires a focused, deliberate blueprint for action. And this blueprint, it has 3 core components. First, there's serial mastery, which is building one pillar at a time. Second, the strategic job, using your day job as a stable platform, not as a cage. And third, an external system, a place to capture all your ideas so you can connect them later. Let's break each one of these down.
The biggest hurdle in serial mastery, and we all know this, is picking that first pillar. The anxiety just paralyzes us. But here's the secret. You have to lower the stakes. This decision is not a life sentence. You're not choosing for the rest of your life. You are just choosing for this season. It's just the first draft of your blueprint.
See, most people fall into what's called one-shot thinking, where they view a career choice as this permanent monument that they have to get absolutely perfect. But the polymath reframes this completely. Your first pillar isn't a monument, it's a beta test. It's an experiment designed to do one single thing, to buy data from reality. That's it.
So how do you overcome the paralysis to even start the test? You use the 70% rule. Most of us, we wait for 100% certainty before we make a move. But clarity is a byproduct of motion, not observation. The rule is simple. If you have about 70% of the information, you act.
That last 30%, it can only be found through the friction of actually doing the thing. By waiting for perfect clarity, you're paying a massive stagnation tax that is way more expensive than any minor mistake.
So once you've built that first pillar to a point of fluency, and your curiosity is really pulling you somewhere else, you make a conscious choice. This is not quitting in the traditional sense. This is strategic quitting. It's not running away from a challenge. It's graduating to the next one. You are deliberately and with purpose beginning construction on your next pillar. And finally, you have to manage your incredible flow of ideas. Your brain is an idea factory, right? But your working memory is a tiny little workbench. Trying to hold everything in your head is a recipe for complete overwhelm. So an external system, a notebook, an app, whatever works for you, is non-negotiable. It lets you capture an interest and set it aside guilt-free, knowing that you can come back and connect the dots later on.
Okay, so let's put this all together. This isn't just a career tactic, it's a completely new identity. You stop being a victim of the perfect path, and you start being the architect of your own pivots.
This is your new mandate. Forget think twice, act once. That's old news. You simulate, you run a beta test, and then you iterate based on the real-world data you just collected. You don't let an outdated map make you feel lost. Your power to connect ideas is exactly what this complex, wicked world desperately needs.
So if there's one thing you take away from this, let it be this. You are not a dabbler who lacks grit. You are a potential polymath. Let that self-blame just fade away, and replace it with a quiet confidence in your unique design. Pick your first pillar, commit to the beta test, and trust that your curiosity is not a liability. It is your guide.
So I'll leave you with this one question. Forget about choosing something for the rest of your life. Just thinking about, say, the next 6 months. What's one pillar that has some energy for you right now? What is the first small, low-stakes experiment you are ready to run to start building your M-shaped life?
You know, what if your problem isn't that you can't stick with things? What if your problem is that you have way too many things you want to stick with? You look out at your life and you see like a dozen different possible paths, and every single one of them feels like a part of who you are. So you're not afraid of the work, you're just paralyzed by the choice. Okay, let's really dive into this. We're going to dismantle that anxiety and lay out a real path for those of us who are never, ever meant to be just one thing.
So this feeling, it actually has a name. It's the classic scanner's dilemma. It's this weird paradox where having tons of options doesn't lead to freedom, it leads to a total freeze. It's a super confusing problem that so many curious, ambitious people face, and honestly, it's one that's really misunderstood.
And this phrase, man, it just hits you, right? It perfectly captures that feeling of having all this potential just trapped behind a wall of indecision. If you've ever felt this, you know exactly how frustrating it is. You've got the energy, you've got the curiosity, but you just can't seem to pick a direction and go.
And you know what? Society even has a word for you. And let's be real, it's not usually a compliment. They call you a dilettante. The anxiety that comes with that label is huge. It basically implies you lack depth, you can't commit, and then you get hit with that old, tired phrase, a jack of all trades, master of none. And that right there is the core of the problem. It can feel like your greatest strength, this incredible, world-opening curiosity, is somehow your biggest career liability. But what if that feeling is based on an old, outdated map of the world? Today, we're going to give you a new one.
So we really need to understand that the problem isn't you, it's the advice. Seriously, the old career playbook was written for a world that frankly just doesn't exist anymore.
See, for the last 100 years or so, the world was a much more predictable place. The path to success was pretty clear. Pick one thing, go a mile deep, and become an expert. This is the I-shaped person, with that single, deep pillar of knowledge. And hey, for a long time, that worked. It really did.
To really get this shift, psychologists draw this powerful contrast. The old world was what they call a kind learning environment, kind of like being a golfer. The rules are fixed, you get immediate feedback, and repetition is rewarded. But today, we live in a wicked environment. It's much more like being a firefighter. Every single situation is new, the rules are constantly changing, and your old specialized knowledge might not even apply.
So, here's the crucial question, isn't it? If the world has fundamentally shifted from kind to wicked, why are we all still trying to use the old rulebook? That feeling of being a failure is often just a symptom of being measured against an outdated standard. Your brain might just be built for this new, more complex world.
Okay, so if the old map is useless, we obviously need a new one. And to build a career that truly fits your brain, you have to stop thinking in job titles and start thinking in shapes, a whole new geometry for your career.
All right, first up, we have that eye shape we just talked about, the specialist, a mile deep, an inch wide. Incredibly valuable, absolutely necessary in the world, but it's not the only path to success.
And then you have the opposite, the dash shape. This is the person who's a mile wide, but only an inch deep. Now this is the trap so many of us fall into. We know a little bit about everything, but there's no real foundation. This lack of depth creates a ton of anxiety because you feel like you don't have any solid ground to stand on.
But there's another shape, the most powerful one for a person like you, the M shape, also known as the polymath. Think of it like this. Maybe your first pillar is data science. You go deep. But your second pillar is storytelling, and you go deep there too. And that horizontal bar connecting them, that's your broad interest in psychology, history, and design. All of a sudden, you're not a distracted data scientist. You are the rare person who can take complex data and weave it into a story a CEO can actually understand. And that combination, that is incredibly valuable.
So what's the superpower behind the M shape? Well, it's a concept called far transfer. A specialist uses what's called near transfer. They apply a skill to a very similar problem. But a polymath? They use far transfer. They can see the underlying structure in one field and apply it to a completely different, unrelated one. It's like a mental superpower.
I mean, think about it. A person who really understands the branching structure of tree roots might suddenly see a better way to organize a database. A musician who gets harmony and counterpoint might look at software code and see a more elegant structure. Those random interests you've collected over the years, they're actually your secret weapon, a library of metaphors ready to generate breakthrough insights.
Okay, so this all sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually build an M-shaped life? It's not going to happen by accident. It requires a different kind of strategy. So let's break it down into 3 practical, doable steps.
This strategy is built on 3 pillars of its own: how you learn, how you work, and how you think. It boils down to committing to serial mastery, using a strategic day job, and building an external system. Let's get into each one.
First up, serial mastery. This is key. You cannot build all the pillars at once. That just leads you right back to being that anxious, shallow dash shape. The trick is to pick one pillar that fascinates you and commit to it for a season, maybe 6 to 18 months. Build one leg of that M until it's strong, until you feel like you've got about 80% of it down. You're not trying to be the world's #1 expert, you're just aiming for fluency and a solid foundation to stand on.
Second, the strategic day job. Look, a high-passion, high-stress job might sound exciting, but if it eats up all of your mental energy, there's no room left to explore anything else. The crucial thing here is to reframe your job as a stable platform. Think of Einstein at the patent office. That job paid the bills and gave him the structure that allowed his mind to wander the entire universe. Your job can be a strategic asset that funds and fuels your other pillars.
Finally, and this might be the most crucial step of all, you need an external system. A scanner's brain is a non-stop idea factory, but your working memory is like a tiny workbench. You have to move ideas off the bench to make room for new ones. You've got to capture those fleeting interests. The sociologist Nicholas Luhmann did this with his famous Zettelkasten, or slipbox system, capturing one idea per note card. Over time, all those captured dots start connecting in magical, totally unexpected ways.
So let's put this all together. When you combine serial mastery, a strategic job, and an external system for your ideas, a new identity starts to emerge. It's a fundamental shift in how you see yourself and your place in the world.
Here's the truth. Your brain isn't flawed, and you are not a dabbler who lacks grit. It's designed for this new, wicked world we live in. It's designed to be a bridge, connecting different worlds of knowledge. And once you see that, the self-blame starts to fade, and it's replaced by this quiet confidence in your unique design.
And that really is the ultimate takeaway here. You were never meant to master just one thing. You were meant to be the person who can see how everything connects. Your greatest strength was never your weakness. It was your purpose all along.